Okay, let's do this. See if I can figure out what I'm doing. Okay. All right, guys, I'm waiting for people to get on here, if they even know I'm on here. What I am kind of figuring out, is the sound okay for the people that are here? So I'm in our conference room. It sounds a little echoey. Is the sound okay? Cool, thank you. What I've just kind of figured out here with the table talks and the Q&A platforms, we're making this way too complicated. All I have to do is sit at my computer, hit go live. This is simple. I don't know why we made this so complicated. So here's what we'll do. I wouldn't really call this the Table Talk podcast. I just couldn't find any graphic. I just grabbed whatever I could find real quick. I'll take your questions. I just got done training not too long ago, so I guess you can call this post-training table talk, post-training Q&A. So I have no agenda. I'm just kind of chilling out here before I have to get a little bit of work done before I go home. So I train squats today. So it's Saturdays typically squat day for us. I train with a few guys that some of them I've been training with for probably longer than I wish to. I trained with Todd Brock on Saturday. I've been training with Todd. I met Todd when I first came to Westside back in, actually I met Todd in probably 89 or 90. So been training with Todd for pretty much that long. Joe Amato is another one I'm training with on the weekends. I've been training with Joe since he was one of the first guys that I was training with when I came to Westside. So that goes all the way back probably to, early 90s as well. Ted Tolson, some may know him as Instagram was Ted. Trained with Ted for 10, 15 years. So it's a small group, and then a couple of the employees that we have out here. So it's a small group that we train with, but it's the way I like it right now. It's perfect. So it was squat day. So that's what we did. I guess I'm going to have to leave my old man glasses on the whole time. Let's see here. Also, if you guys can, if there's a good time that you would like, this go live thing or whatever we want to call it, when's a good day and time? If anybody can comment on that or comment after we're live, that would be great to know as well. It's definitely going to be easier for me to do a post training on the weekends because I have more available time. Okay, so what did you train? Happy to have you back. Thank you. If this is going to be as easy as I think it is, it's going to be very easy for me to do these instead of, having to rely on, staff and setup times and all the other kind of stuff. It's just kind of a pain in the ass and pulling it all together, especially when it's weekends as well. Okay, how far is the program that you and Sean are setting up? First question is, how do you know about that? Right now, I am working on a program with John, and it's a little bit of the history on that is, if you followed John or myself, you know that we trained together for a while, a long time as he was getting his pro card. So a lot of the thoughts and a lot of the ideas that we're putting together in this program is kind of the accumulation of that, but not just that, it's the accumulation of after that as well. So while I was training with John for that 2-3 year period of time or whatever it was, I was, the training was almost 100% bodybuilding oriented, which is obviously way out of my wheelhouse, but it's also, I loved it because I love the training hard, the challenge sets. I love that part of it tremendously. But what I didn't like about it was the break away from heavy singles and, the heavier strength training aspect. So what I did after we quit training together, if you kind of really want to say that, because we do train sometimes here and there, very, very there, than here, but I integrated back in a lot of the strength work, the block oriented type of strength work, and so what we've been doing over the past, we've been talking about this for a long time, we've been talking about the integration of this for well over a year. So to answer the question, it's going to, the program is, we're on week 3 right now, but this is in the final editing phase. So we know how long it's going to be. We know how it's going to pan out. We kind of know the template, how everything looks with that. I believe we wrapped up week 2 last week. John's kind of putting together week 3 right now. And the way that we're doing this is we've talked about the template, we talked about the structure, that's all done. So John's taking all that, putting it together, and then he'll send it to me. Then I go through and I make the changes that need to be made to kind of, balance it all out. Once the block is done, a block's basically 3 weeks, then we'll go through again and make sure that the volume's kind of all tied up to where it needs to be, because the block has to build on the next block and the next block. And then we want to stick some stories in there later, but I have to, the way that I work, I have to do all the analytical programming part first. So a very wordy, lengthy response to your question is, we want to have it done before the end of the month. That doesn't mean that it's going to be available at the end of the month, but the goal is to have it done before the end of the month, at least the analytical part. Going back in and putting the stories in may take a little bit longer. If we have to film any videos for that, it may take a little bit longer too, but it's definitely in the works. It's definitely going to be done. So I didn't know, I just saw Mason here said that John's been talking about it. We haven't even talked about the marketing of it. I've been so focused on just the programming side of it right now to really know anything else with that. All right, man, there's a lot of comments on here. Thoughts on programming for new lifters who want to build a base before getting into powerlifting. Thoughts on programming for new lifters who want to build a base before getting into powerlifting. Building a base, what do you mean by that? So when I see questions like this, I have to think about, because every answer with training is always, it depends. So rather than just saying it depends and coming up with some, bullshit answer, I'm trying to figure out what the majority of the people mean with that question. So by base, I'm assuming that what you mean is just the core strength, or whatever anybody wants to say, that the stabilizer strength, basically everything moving from the center of the body out is kind of what I consider base development, as well as the cardiovascular development that ties into being able to recover. So somebody that, all right, let me look at it this way, because we just talked about John's program that we're working on. A lot of this is kind of going into that. So when you take a lifter that's just a gym, this isn't derogatory in any way, but a gym lifter, somebody that's not a power lifter or a strength athlete, if you're looking at how many reps they could typically do in a 70% range or an 80% range, it's going to be a lot higher than what you're going to see a strength athlete be able to do. So if the gym athlete or the bodybuilding athlete, let's just say bodybuilding athlete, if they can do 80% for 8 reps, where a strength athlete will be able to do 80% for 3 reps, you have to understand what that means from a programming standpoint. What I see that as is the person that can do 80% for 8 reps is leaving a lot of absolute and maximal strength on the table, because they just don't know how to lift heavy weight. So now what happens, and you see this a lot in bodybuilding, what happens when the bodybuilder shifts to powerlifting and they don't take the time to do this base building that we're talking about, shortly thereafter, a couple months, 3-4 months, whatever time frame, you're going to see a lot of, I've seen in people that I've known, not worked with, but known from the outside, that basically don't listen to what I tell them to say, is where I'm going with this. They tear their biceps, they develop shoulder problems, they have elbow problems, they have tendonitis, they have all these problems because they're not conditioned to be able to lift the heavy weights yet. They're just jumped straight in to do it. They haven't built the stabilizers in a loose sense to be able to do that. So how do you do that? So there's multiple ways to do that. I'm just going to throw some ideas out, some of the ideas that John and I are putting in the program that we're talking about. What you'll see a lot of times is they don't know how to, I call it be grounded with the weight. So if they squat, they don't know how to take the weight out and just let it settle, and when you let it settle, it's activated. Basically, they go out and they just squat. And that's fine, but you're not going to ever be able to lift heavy maximal weights by doing that. You have to be able to take the weight out, let it settle, and then go from there. So part of this base building that we're talking about is on any work set, I'll typically ask somebody to hold the first rep. Say it's a bench press. Take the bench press out, hold the first rep for a 1,001, 1,002, then go down. Then do your set of 3, 5, or whatever it is, and then hold the last rep, 1,001, 1,002, 1,003, rack it. So if it's 2 or 3, it doesn't really matter. All I'm looking to do is to expand that time under tension, to build the static, I guess it'd be static strength, my brain's kind of shot from training. It's not isometric. It's basically it's to build the stabilizers to be able to hold and stabilize the weight, right? That's not a catch-all for building a base. That's one little piece that you can put in there to be able to help. Another piece to be able to put in there to help is, actually, training the abdominals, the lower back, those kind of things, and getting the range of motion for biceps, for instance. Biceps are an area that, when people convert over to powerlifting, it's usually one of the biggest areas. What you typically find a lot of the times is they can't even do a barbell curl. And it's not because they don't have the strength to do a barbell curl. They can't grab the barbell. So in this base building, Bompa used to call it anatomical adaptation phase. I want to see things done for the biceps that are going to put it in that lengthened position. So the barbell curls, incline dumbbell curls. I'd rather see those things than hammer curls, because we want to be able to prepare the body to be able to stabilize and lift those heavier loads. So I can go on forever about that. That's enough. I'm going to go to another question. There's a lot of questions and comments on here. So if I don't see these, just ask it again if you really want me to answer it. When we are actually bracing the core or tightening the abdominal muscles, are we not kind of slightly pulling our abs in? People get too fucking caught up in all the nuances of this. Let me put it as tactfully as I can. For 3 decades, I've heard, and I don't want to say every possible way to engage, if you want to call it that, your core or your abdominals. For 3 decades, I've heard 100 different things. Breathe into your belly, breathe into your diaphragm, breathe through your nose, breathe through your mouth. Tilt your pelvis, don't tilt your pelvis. Do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. It doesn't matter what all that is. What matters is is it stable when you're lifting the heavy weight? Bottom line, it doesn't matter as long as the end result for what most people are teaching is exactly the same. So don't get so tied up in all the nuance of should you do this, should you do this, so-and-so says this, so-and-so does that. Remember, all these people, they're interested in, not all, okay, but most of these people are interested, it's a dick measuring contest, right? How can they make themselves look smarter than the other person? How can they make themselves look like an expert? Because they're selling fucking training. They're either selling programs, they're selling online training, they're selling books, they're selling something associated with training. This is why I fucking hate the idea of selling content, but to produce content, I mean, it's kind of a pickle that we're in. Because as soon as you start having to rely on the monetization of the content, you get yourself in this fucked up position, and I've seen it for 30 years, where you can't be wrong because then you're going to devalue your brand. And granted, I think that's all bullshit, by the way, but that's essentially what it ends up being. And you end up in this fucked up position where how do I want to say this and not get kicked off of YouTube, is you end up in this position to where when you have to come out and say, you know what, I might not be right, then people are going to, well, then your program sucks. Well, there's a lot of ways to get to the end result. Anybody who says any different is just fucking stupid. Because if there was only one way to get the end result, you would know what it is. Everybody would know what it is. Obviously, there's many ways to get the end result. So what you see is this positioning that everybody's trying to do, and they try to do it through the nuances on how they're going to explain things. I'm not telling you to not listen to them, because somebody may tell you if the end result is pretty much always the same. If people who know what they're doing, the end result is pretty much always the same. The end goal is always the same, except for the people that just want to make money in the industry. Their end goal then is to make money. So their end goal is not about helping people. The end goal is about marketing, branding, and promotion. So those two things are separate. So you want to listen to them, right? Because what somebody's been telling you, me, anybody else, doesn't really matter. It may not be connecting with you the right way. So then you listen to somebody else and see if that connects. Listen to the person who disagrees with the person that you think knows everything. Because at a meeting with Sam Brown, who we just hired to come in to help with performance, and the first thing that I told him is you have to be, if you're going to suggest somebody does something, then you better know and be able to argue why that's the wrong thing to do, just as well as you can argue why it's the right thing to do. And if you can't do that, don't suggest it. So going back to this ab thing, look and find what the end result is that everybody's looking for, and then keep that in mind when you're looking to people or looking to people for the information. Basically, going back to old Stephen Covey stuff, don't do anything unless you know what the end, keep the end in mind. That's going to clear so much of the garbage in the promotion. I mean, it is the industry. It's going to clear out the commotion anyhow. All right, where we go here. How do you go about calorie surplus? Me, or I mean, if it's somebody that I'm talking to, surplus for what? You know, it's if somebody's in a calorie surplus, then they're trying to gain weight. I mean, that's kind of how I see that. So for me, does it matter where the calories are coming from? Yeah, yes and no. I mean, if they're young and there's no health issues, or you know, everything's, keep in mind that I'm older. You know, I've been around the hill or around the block, I suppose, many times. So if I'm talking to somebody that's been training for 35 years and they're 45, 50 years old, that calorie surplus, if they're talking to me, it's not going to be the same. If they got plaque buildup and they have all, there's a lot of other things, there's a lot of other issues there that are, it's going to go into changing how the recommendation is going to be otherwise. But for most people, it's just, the calorie surplus is a calorie surplus. So I'll just leave it at that. But if all your nutrients are crap, then even in the calorie surplus, you have to still have the nutrients to be able to recover and grow. So I'm all for adding calories that are going to be bad calories, if there is such a thing. But 80% of what you're eating should still be good. I'm not sure if I answered that question or not. Is belt tightness just a preference? I personally make sure my deltoids tight. Yeah, maybe it is, a bit of a preference. I think that if you pull your belt too tight, then it's harder for you to breathe, and it's harder for you to actually maintain the tightness that you need. Personally, I like to have people wear their belt about 1 notch looser than what they typically would, unless it's a deadlift, because it depends upon the waist size as well. If it's a deadlift and you can make the waist size smaller, for a lot of people that kind of helps their leverages a little bit. So it's not so much about anything else, but just getting more out of the equipment. I personally would fall to the, leave it a notch loose and make it tight. Now, I'm not so sure about the push out part, because it's just more of doing what you have to do to keep that torso as tight as you can. Thoughts on conjugate for beginners? How strong should I look at these things different than other people do. So you got conjugate, you got linear, you got block training. Basically everything is when you look at it from a broad sense and you step back, everything's some type of block periodization. Even linear, when you step back, it's still working in different type of blocks. But when you're talking about beginners, before I even look at any type of methodology or whatever it is, I want to know what they're training for. I want them to enjoy what they're doing, because if you have, let me just slide in this a different way. If you have somebody that has a personality type that their whole world operates better for them if things are certain, then they're going to probably do better on a linear scheme where the exercises aren't going to change as frequently, because they're going to know what's coming. They're going to feel more comfortable. That's going to keep them kind of in their comfort zone, which I understand you need to be out of your comfort zone to be able to progress. But remember, you said this is a beginner. So what we want to get with the beginner is buy-in. You got to have the buy-in. So I want to figure out, if they like their world to be more certain, then I'm going to have some type of program that's going to have more certainty built into it. Or if they like their world to just be fucking chaos, well, then that's where more frequent changes are going to come into play. So that's where a conjugate would, you see what I'm saying? This isn't more, this is, I look at things differently from that regard. Because for a beginner, everything's going to work. We all know that. Everything's going to work. So buy-in has to be more important than what the actual methodology is. In time, that can change to be what it's going to be. Okay, I think I saw a bar here because Mason just commented on this about the American cambered grip bar and the neutral grip. The difference with the, we have it on our list to do video on these bars. And there are a couple differences with the neutral grip and the cambered grip. The neutral grip, and that we need to do the video on this one because there's so many different bars it gets mixed up. The holy shit, my brain just died again. The one I'd have to look at, I should know this better than this, they are our products. The couple changes with it is, one of the bars, if you look close, it has different diameters on the grips than the other one does. So most people overlook that. And that's just because of how the bars are being made. So in other words, the closer grip will be a little bit fatter than the wider grip. When with the, the angle grip, I don't believe that's the case. The neutral grip, it is the case. So that's one thing with that. Most people, if I'm just to go on sales, most people like the cambered angled grip more. So we'll just go with that. We'll do a video on it though. Obviously it needs to be done if I can't even tell you what the fuck it is. I've seen you in videos use the verbal cueing of grabbing the bar in the middle and sliding out. Okay, for the deadlift, the question here is, in some of the videos they've seen that I'll cue people. It's mostly for, I believe, a sumo. Yes, a sumo deadlift. The reason I'll have people grab the center, and it's not everybody, because I'm not going to fix something that's not broke. So if the shoulders are jacked up, in other words, they're not aligned, one's more forward than the other, or one's lower than the other, usually it's because the way that they're grabbing the bar isn't centered. So if I have them grab the center of the bar first, that aligns their shoulders evenly. Then they slide one, slide the other. That's the reason for that. If they're going up and they're grabbing it and it's fine, then I'm not going to have them do that. I think the question was, are there any other cues? There's a ton of cues based upon what's wrong. So I can't give you specific cues because I don't know what your problem is. And not only that, the thing with cueing is 3 people can have exactly the same problem. And if I'm working with them, not all 3 people they're not going to respond to the same cue. Sometimes I got to use a cue that's so fucked up that if I don't explain exactly why, this is why I don't like some of the videos. And we put one of the old videos up and I had them take it down because I didn't provide the context for why the cues were what they were. I've learned over the years that it was an archive video that we put up a couple days ago. I've learned over the years I have to do that if I'm putting the videos out, because people are looking at cues like they're the ultimate answer, and they're not looking at why the cue is even being given in the first place. So when there's a disruption or an issue with the technical aspect of a lift, cueing works. Anybody that says it doesn't, they obviously they haven't coached for a long enough period of time. But it does work, but you have to find what works for that person. And a lot of things play into that. If they're a visual learner, it's going to work different than their audio learner. It's just how they take things in. So you just try a bunch of different things till you find what it does. But don't keep trying to do the same one over and over and over and over and over and over and think that it's going to work. If it didn't work the first 4 times, it certainly isn't going to work the next 100. Have you ever come close to blacking out after a heavy lift? I've never passed out after a heavy lift, but have I come close to it? Oh yeah. The seeing stars, or I guess it looks like speckles of light, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I've seen that quite a bit, but never passed out. So there can be a lot of reasons why somebody would pass out, but you still need to be able to breathe. So as you're straining, you can only strain and keep your air for so long. The deadlift is a tough one for this because I'll use pulses of air to release, or try to teach people to release pulses of air. And as they come up, so they're holding the air and they start straining and it's really moving slow. It's more of a type of thing. That way shoulders don't drop, nothing drops because of that, but it's just a way to release enough air so you don't actually black out and hit the platform. For a wide stance single ply lifter using box squats on a dynamic lower, would you recommend using briefs, raw, alternative waves, or something different? I would recommend probably the briefs. I wouldn't recommend, well, it's single ply, so you're not going to use, super thick, jacked up briefs. So I would use the briefs just because it's a little different. I mean, if you're a geared lifter, what the gear gives you is a lot of neural feedback on where your body positioning should be. And sometimes when I say it gives you something, you'll know what I'm talking about because you've had gear on, but it gives you something to push back against. So if it doesn't feel like you're in the right position and the gear is not binding where it needs to bind, it's kind of a reminder to you of what you need to adjust. Do you need to sit back more? Do you need to drop down more? Do you try to, need to pull your feet out more? Do you need to, all those different things? You take all that away, you kind of lose that. Now, that's because you said dynamic work. So to me, dynamic work is also technique work and technique reinforcement. So now if you were to do like max effort work, or you were going to go through a different dynamic phase, that's going to put you in a different, say a close stance phase, or a super low box phase or something like that, then I probably wouldn't use the brace. I would only use it when you're trying to ingrain that technical aspect. And what is all this messages being held for review? Those are the ones I want to see. Those are probably good. Okay, I'm struggling to sit straight down in the squat, lean forward too much. Is this something too weak for me? This is Bailey Hawking here. I don't think I'm going out on a limb here, obviously, because it's what, 2 sentences, and I haven't seen anything. I'm going to say that's technical. So just lower the weight and work on reinforcing the technique. You know, if your technique is starting to go to hell or it doesn't look right, then lower the weight and go through a 3-week phase of just maybe go 10 sets the first week, 15 sets the second week, 20 sets the third week. Keep the weight the same, maybe 50%, nothing too crazy, and just work on the technique. And it's a conditioning phase as well. So keep the rest periods kind of trimmed down and then go from there. Any plans on bringing gear back to the website? No. I think for now, with even before the issues with metal last year, our gear sales were horrible. I mean, it's just the fact of the matter. I mean, they were never great to begin with. So, I mean, people are often surprised, and when I tell them how much of our revenue was actually generated through competitive lifters. And now we know what that is without a doubt, because openpowerlifting.org is an open source site. So we were able to go in there and to export everybody and then compare that to our customer database going all the way back. We've never had a year that our customer base from competitive powerlifters was more than 7% of all customers. The highest year that we had, the revenue was 5.75%. I believe the average revenue was 4.5%. Now, when the inventory that we were carrying for a while was 25% of our entire warehouse. So even before all these things, we weren't selling it, and it was an inventory nightmare. You know, even now we lost a fuck ton on that whole metal thing just in the inventory and it doesn't matter because we probably would never have sold it anyhow. So to bring in, let's say we wanted to bring in gear, I can't justify the expense of bringing in gear that's got 13 different sizes and you need a couple of each different size, and they're a couple $100 a piece to be able to bring in when I know we're going to sell $25,000 of it a year. It's just, I hate it, but it's just what the market is, and it's not there. So basic business, you know, if the market's there, it's obviously there, but I don't know. I mean, the market was never there to even begin with. And, you know, to have such a low customer base made up of that, I mean, let's put it this way. If you had a business and only 4.5% of your revenue was coming from a certain target market, how much are you really going to invest into that? Are you going to invest, you know, 25, 30%, 40% of your inventory in that? No, you're not going to be able to do that. So I don't see that happening. I'm never going to say never, but I really don't see that happening. Now, to keep in mind, I'm only talking competitive lifters, right? So competitive lifters are not people who train like power lifters. That number far exceeds, but those people generally are not going to be the people wearing gear. Yeah, I talked earlier about the program with Meadows. Hopefully when I'm done with this thing, it will get stored on YouTube. I don't know. I'll try to figure it out. JM diet to move up a weight class. Man, I understand that that's a great story. It's a funny story. I get all that. You guys got to understand, and the people that hear that need to understand. I was stuck at trying to gain weight for 6 years, and I would put it on, it would come back off. It wasn't like I just got stuck for a few months. I mean, and I don't want to say I was a super clean eater, but my diet was very on point up until that time. So where my problem probably is it was probably too clean for what I was trying to do, because of to get a calorie surplus was so much food. It was not impossible to do, but super uncomfortable to do. And it was very, very hard to do for an extended period of time. So that whole diet is not something I'm going to tell people, you need to do this, when I don't know context of that, because you don't need a huge calorie surplus to be able to gain weight. You just need a small calorie surplus. So try other means first and go from there. I've seen people have more success, as long as they don't have nut allergies, with trail mix, and so for years before, when I was moving up from 220, 242, and even trying to, and into the 275 class, I relied a lot on just trail mix, where it was peanuts, cashews, M&Ms, raisins. That was pretty much it. And throw it in a Ziploc bag and just eat it all the time. A handful of that here and there. Very rarely do I see that not work. Just try stuff like that first. What has EFS done to manage cash flow during COVID? Not spend. It's pretty simple with that. So I don't want to get into all that. Our biggest issue with, it's funny because everybody thinks that, our sales went up 500%. No, I wish. We're in the retail market. We have to have product to sell. So when suppliers are not giving you product because they're going direct to market, then we have to be very, very cautious on what we're doing, because sales are not there. So a lot of what we did, if you've been following the story, is I had to reallocate a lot of our content expense into absorbing our shipping prices, because that was a huge pain point for people who wanted to buy. So it was kind of a wake-up call in a way, to realize that we were severely overspending on content. And it's also why we're trying to find ways to monetize the content through the YouTube, and doing this crap and telling people to subscribe, hit the bell, or whatever they're supposed to do, because every little bit helps with that. Because when all that's coming out of the bottom line, then it's not going into absorbing shipping costs and things like that. So that was a big part of the strategy that kind of went into play, is that, so obviously the drop of the podcast, all the other things that you've seen, because people value the lower shipping prices and the lower prices far more than they do the podcast that we're making no money on, or the YouTube that we're making cents on a dollar on. So as we're starting to scale content back up, because we know we can't continue to keep absorbing shipping prices, because it just doesn't scale. So we got to figure out how we're able to keep that still down, but not lose our ass on all the content that we're putting out. So a lot of the things that we're doing with content this year is trying to maximize, the ad revenue for one. Our website has a shit ton of traffic, and we're going to try putting ads on articles, because it's just low hanging fruit that we're not using. Fucking everybody else has ads now too. And if that can at least pay for, one or two staff members, that's going to help tremendously. People don't give a fuck about this. So we'll get into something else. Just bought your SS Yoke Bar a few weeks ago. Is there any benefit to holding the handles closer to the body during squats, or does it? It does kind of matter. There's some things with that matter. Again, they're nuanced, but if somebody has a problem with their squat or their deadlift and they're pitching forward and it's shortly after they come out of the hole, then I would like to see them pull the handles down when they're squatting to force them to bring that back up. If, for instance, one of the guys I was training with today was working up a little bit, max effort stuff with the Yoke Bar, kind of wanted to test and kind of see where he was at. So in that case, I don't want to see that technical breakdown. I want to see them do better. So that was pushing the handles up more. So if you're grabbing the handles really, really close in, you're not going to be able to push up, to be able to keep that from, pivoting off through. So a lot of what we put into our pad design is to allow these different things to kind of happen, with the way that that's structured from that. So the other thing I would caution, if you're always holding them really, really close and you're holding them too tight, your biceps can take a little beating on that. So if I'm going real heavy on that, or somebody that's been around the block 3 or 4 times, I'll have them wear elbow sleeves just to kind of, put some compression on there, or to not hold them as close up. Have we looked into Twitch for increasing your social media footprint? We're looking at different social media things, but you guys need to understand we only have so many staff, so who's going to do it? So there's all these different social media networks, and that's the problem. Who's going to do it? Keep in mind I'm doing this live stream right now in my office by myself. So there's only so many staff hours you can allocate towards things. So we're trying to figure out, and we know like our Instagram does very well. Our Instagram does way better than what the YouTube does. So we allocate our resources to the things that do really well. And over last year, I think we dropped pretty much everything except the Instagram, because it was the only thing that was helping. That doesn't mean it's going to be the thing that's going to help in Q2 of this year or next year. So we're always looking at different things to see what to move into now, but we don't have the staff or the resources to be able to spread out across everything. Hell, I just figured out how to do this. On a previous video, you talked about splitting a 4-day program into 8 days for busy people that don't have the time. How would that work? I don't know how that would work for 5-3-1. I know 5-3-1, but by no means am I an expert on the 5-3-1. I don't know that. What I can say is a lot of people that have had hard time with recovery, that have split, say their 7-day training over 14 days, have been phenomenal with that. But the other thing, and this is probably more important, that I've seen in almost every one of those people's cases, none of them could sleep for shit. So for a lot of the bigger ones, as soon as they got a CPAP, boom, fixed it, they're back to training more frequently. So if you have to start spreading things out like that far, it's a good Band-Aid for what you want to try to do. But see if you can find the other issues that are inhibiting your ability to recover. It could be too much volume in your training. It could be not enough sleep. It could be shitty nutrition. It could be a lot of different things. So, look globally, I guess. Your views on doing tummy vacuums, I can't say that, when doing a deadlift. Seen the question a few times. I don't know what a tummy vacuum is, so I can't answer that one. I think I kind of know, but I don't. I'm not sure I would believe. I'm not a fan of sucking in your stomach for any lifting, if that's kind of what you mean. Dave, look into Twitch. It's like being here, but you can charge subscription. Calorie Bar does form check. We'll look into it. Here's the thing with the form check things. I tried those last year, and our views on it sucked. For the time it took to set up and to do that, I still have a business to run. So I can't justify the time into something that's going to have such a shitty return when my time goes into a lot of other things. So I can't, what the hell year is it now? 2019, I was spending probably 30 hours a week of my own time, just answering DMs on social media, on YouTube, and all the different content. And that wasn't that different than what I've done for the last 20 years. But last year my time had to be allocated on things that, were going to help the business. And, I got to figure out how, my time's more valuable in other areas of the business by far. So when I do something like that form check, I'm answering this because I've been asked about this 3 or 4 times. I can't spend like 2 hours of my time a week doing something that's going to get like 1,500 views and 0 revenue. It's just, I can't do that. So, but we'll look into it. I didn't know that the Twitch thing had that aspect with that. And don't get me wrong, we monetize the YouTube, and it brings in it brings in about enough to pay for a third of one employee. So it's there. So I don't know why, if we don't have, and I understand part of it, if we don't have the traffic here to be able to monetize, how in the hell are we going to have it on a new platform where we start at 0? So that's the other thing with that too. So, and this isn't, somebody made a comment that I saw on the video I made about the table talk. This isn't an excuse. I completely understand. We got to work on our thumbnails. We got to work on all this other kind of shit. I don't need to work on that. I got to work on the things that help the business. So my staff is working on those type of things. After meet, did you direct your training towards more hypertrophy to prevent getting burned out? Yes and no. I mean, I competed for a lot of years. So in my earlier years, most definitely I did that. So that was when my training was more linear based. So I'd peak for the meet, and then I would take off 4 weeks completely off all training altogether. And this was more common back then when I was doing that. So I mean, no training, not going in the gym, nothing. And then when I would come back, it was more hypertrophy training because I needed time to reacclimate to training again. So it was more conditioning type training. And then it would stay hypertrophy based until about 12 or 16 weeks out of the next meet, depending upon how far off I got during that off season. Then later, I kind of stuck with the same thing, but I didn't take as much time off. I might take 2 weeks off. And then I used a lot of the post-meet training using HIIT type of training, high intensity training. There's a lot of different names for that. And I like that because it was in and out quick, which was a welcome change to when you're in a gym for 3 hours training one lift. Then when I went to Westside and we're conjugate based, there were basically no days off. So the hypertrophy was built into the conjugate training. So there's 3 different ways to go from that. We like to help add subscriptions. We're looking at different things. I'd rather, be honest with you, I'd rather try to see how we can leverage the ad revenue because the site does get so much traffic. And I ran it a little bit earlier. I didn't get in this whole media thing and this whole passing on thing to have that be a whole business structure. I don't want to do that. I really don't. I hate that because then it's a lot of it's doing it for the wrong reasons for me. So there's a value thing that kind of goes on there. We don't need this. This is what I don't want this to be the misunderstanding. I don't want to make it sound bad either. We don't need any of this for our business. We really don't. Our business is just fine. I don't have to be on YouTube. We don't have to be on YouTube. We don't have to be on any social media for that matter. Our word of mouth advertising with coaches and all that is just and the people that come to the site for the articles is far and away we're fine. We don't need that. The issue is the allocated hours that are going into it and what the return is. So that's kind of what the balance that we need to figure out. So it's not like we're in this hard up situation where this has to work. It's just why it becomes a decision on my end of is my media times staff hours better allocated to product photos and videos that go on our shopping cart or videos for TikTok? It's kind of an easy answer, but you have to, there is content marketing does have a place. So I see that, but we'll figure it out. So it's definitely not a hard up situation. It's not something that we have to do either. So we'll just figure it out. Would you ever suggest using a wide grip for max effort bench? Me personally, no. That's just, I've seen too many pec tears that it's a risk benefit ratio. And that's assuming that you're talking about a 1 rep max. Do you guys do financing for your home gyms? We have companies that we work with that if you get a hold of our sales reps, either Matt Goodwin or Nate Harvey, they can kind of help you with that. We don't personally do the financing, but we have a few different companies that might be able to help you out. Any insight on bigger biceps would help with bicep pain when squatting a low bar? All right, bicep pain when squatting a low bar, maybe it's not the biceps, right? Maybe you're not holding the weight on your lats as much as you could, and you're holding it too much on your arms. There's, if you know, or if you train with somebody that can look at that a little bit better, see how engaged your lats or how tight your lats really are when you're squatting, and then find a way to make the lats tighter, because if all that load is going straight to the bicep, that's going to be an issue. You can always move your grip out too. I mean, if your biceps are bigger, just being in that cramped position. The other thing that helped me a lot was elbow sleeves. And this is before, elbow sleeves are like a whole different level of shit now. But when I was competing, they were just the elbow sleeves you buy at the drugstore. And they were fine. I would just slap on whatever crappy heat thing I could find and then put those on. And it was enough that if I folded it up a little bit, that it provided enough compression that it wasn't complete hell to be able to get through. And then I would ice them immediately after. And I don't know if it was so much the ice. I would freeze a Dixie cup. And then I would peel it off, and then I would massage it. So it's probably the massage more than it was the ice. And then that kind of helped it a little bit. But the biggest solution for me was when I came to Westside, I had no idea that things like squat bars existed. So being able to have a little wider bar and to get my arms out a little wider made a huge difference. Can we get more t-shirts and hoodies in the UK store? Yes, I will pass that on. Appreciate the content. Thank you very much. If anyone wants to be an intern for your gym, where do we go here? Yes, if you go to our jobs, I think it's called jobs. If you just email jobs@elitefts.net, what you're looking at, a resume or whatever it's going to be, we can look into that. If you go to the bottom of our homepage into the footer, I believe there's a job area that will give you that as well. Currently, we're really not looking for anybody, but we are one position away from we've restructured our media department, and the last hire is going to start March 22nd. So once we get them all in place and systems are working kind of fluidly, we're going to start bringing interns for media for sure. So we're looking for them, but it would be too premature to bring them in right now. As far as the gym, if it's a trainer for the gym, you got to understand we don't have a public gym. When we seen other workouts with John Meadows, we did capture some footage when John was out here a few weeks ago. We've not gotten around to posting any of that yet. So we do have that, and then soon. What is the first specialty bar someone should buy if they want to run conjugate from a home gym? I would say the SS Yoke Bar. The only reason I'm pausing is because sometimes it depends how much lower body work a person's doing. Because if it's not for that, then you're kind of reduced to a generic overhead press and JM presses with the bar, which are good. But I like that bar because it opens your options to be able to build the squat, bench. Well, the bench or the squat and deadlift for sure. How would you suggest moving the grip wider in the bench? I've always developed my packs and back. A finger every 3 weeks. So if you got middle finger on the rings, then go for a finger on the rings for a few weeks, but I wouldn't go any further than that. And then I would stick with it for either a 3-week or 6-week phase, and then go out there. Why is the Mastodon bar not available anymore? A few reasons for that. It's kind of an easy answer to be able to give. Even before COVID, we were lucky if we sold 5 a year. So, again, that's one of those things where we're not selling a bunch of it to begin with. So it's kind of hard to justify, the inventory for it. The second thing is the manufacturer of that bar was unable to get us just regular power bars for 9 months. So even if we did place an order for 5 of those, I may not see them for 9 months. Then I'm going to sit on them for a year, and we don't make a lot of money on them to begin with. So the shitty part of that, though, and I get this, is I don't believe the Bulldog bar is around anymore either. So there's a void now for, I guess you would call it a multiply power bar. But the problem is nobody's going to buy them. If people are going to buy them, then it would be there. If you do a little research, and I don't want to bash any company by name, and especially a company that I'm going to still be doing business with. If you do a little research, you can find who the original manufacturers of these bars are. I've given permission for them to just sell direct, because the last thing I want to do is to take a pre-order on a bar that we're going to sit on for 9 months and have to put my customer service and all kinds of issues because of that. So long story short on that one. What are your experience and thoughts on a Zercher harness? I'd have to know exactly what one you're talking about, and I'm not really sure which ones are still on the market right now either. So the one Louis was selling, if he's still selling it, it's okay. That's probably the better of all of them that I've seen. A lot of the other ones that I've seen, they fall off your shoulders. The pins are in the wrong place. I've had, with a couple of them, I've had to cut the top pin off because it's worthless, and have, different pins welded in there. And so I don't know what's available. So I'm not really, outside of that one that I just talked about, I don't have the education or experience to be able to comment. What can I do to maintain strength for the squat without a squat rack? I have a few plates and a bar borrowed from my gym. Man, obviously the simple answer, Hindu squats, bodyweight squats, and wall squats, and all this calisthenic stuff. You already know that, though. So I guess if somebody was to ask me this and they're in the gym and it's just somebody personally talking to, I tell them not to fucking worry about it. Worry about it when you can get back and you can squat. Just work on the things that you can work on and spend less time worrying about the things you can't do, and just ramp the shit out of the things that you can. So make a bad situation good by, taking those other things to a different level. How would you motivate a 60-year-old man, tradesman, who's 6'1", 180 in weight, can't convince him to eat more? The guy benches 135 and I have trouble. How do you know that he wants to do it in the first place? So, are you trying to motivate somebody that doesn't really want to do this? Because, let's say I was really into racing cars, but you don't give a fuck about cars. Why would I waste my time trying to motivate you into, racing cars? So I'm making a big assumption here, but if you have to work that hard to be able to motivate somebody to do something, then maybe that's not what they want to do. And, spend more time on trying to figure out what they want to do and helping them achieve that. I could have sworn I've seen a knurled fat bar on your website. Has it been discontinued? No, I will have to look. I think we had one up there. Don't quote me on that. It's called El Gordo, but let me make a note here. Last year, we had to take a lot of the bars and products off our site, so we had to hide them just because of supply chain issues. So there could be a chance that didn't get loaded back. So I'll look into that. Have you trained military men, specifically special forces guys? Trained how? Most of the training that I've done with anybody over the past 10 years was been consulting. So have I consulted with people, on things that they should do? Yes. Have I trained them? That's another story. So that'd be no. So I don't know what you mean by that. You have talked about rooting the floor on the squat. What would you recommend rooting the floor on the conventional deadlift as well? Yeah, I think you should always be somewhat aware of what your feet are doing. You keep in mind on a lot of these things, if your feet are planted, right, and they're grounded, and you got a lot of weight on your back or in your hands, typically they're not going to be moving around a whole lot. Now, I've seen it happen. So that's what I'm saying. You want to be conscious of it, but you don't want to be over conscious of it unless there's a problem. So if I was looking at a video of you deadlifting and I'm seeing unnecessary movement, throughout the foot, it probably needs to be addressed. If I'm not seeing it, then don't worry about it. Don't fix what's not broke. Favorite supplements? It depends upon the deficiencies, but I guess right now I can say everybody should be taking vitamin D, right? That's a simple one. Found an old article with black and white mentioning your wife training at Westside and competing. Yes. Is that true? Yes. Man, we're going way back now. So that kind of ties in a little bit to the history of Elite FTS as you see it today as well. So obviously people know, I came to train at Westside a long time ago. And after being there, might have been a year or two, maybe. I met my wife in the weight room when we were in college. So she had a background in weight training, never really serious about anything, but she liked lifting weights, just put it that way, but not super good at it. And her back started to bother her pretty bad. So she came in to Westside during that time. And then Louis showed her, the reverse hyper and some other things to do with her back. And she started training at night with Louis's wife, Doris, and Amy Weisbrenner, Vanessa Swanker, and some of the other ones that were in the night crew that was in there. And just kind of fell in with them. And I think it was about a year later, she, at 123 single ply gear, she squatted, I get it mixed up sometimes. I think she squatted 365 and deadlifted 345. And benched 245 or 250, total her elite, her first meet. So that was with a little bit of background in training. And then about a year, not even really a year, maybe 9 months training at Westside. She did a couple other meets. She was in there for maybe 2-3 years. And then, started doing some other things. And then 5-6 years ago, I did a figure competition, now just works out normally. So yeah, during that time period that she was in there is when she was complaining about her job at the time. and I was doing the seminars and consulting and some other things in my own personal training where I was working at the time. And Louis basically said to her, well, why don't you sell some of the accessory crap that he didn't want to sell anymore? He just wanted to focus on the videos, reverse hyper, and the other stuff. So we were kind of in the process of doing that. So that enabled us to, Louis fronted us, not a lot, but basically the inventory he had on consignment. And so that helped. It helped a fucking lot, is what it did. So it helped in the trajectory to get this going. So if she wasn't in there training, I'm not too sure I'd be sitting here doing this right now. So is it possible to combine powerlifting and calisthenics? I can, yeah. I mean, if you're talking powerlifting training with calisthenic work, of course. Straight legs or bent knees when doing floor presses. Ah, man. Everybody's going to have different opinions on that. I like the legs to be straight. It's my bias. It's my opinion, because part of the reason why you're doing the floor press is to take the legs out of the lift. So as soon as you put the feet back on the floor, you're kind of putting it back in there again. So everybody's got different opinions on that. The only thing that really matters there is if you're doing it for max effort work and you do it one way, say the legs straight, and then the next time you do it, you bend your knees, and that's how you broke your PR. You didn't really break a PR. So I could see having PRs with both of those. So there's no right or wrong on that, just kind of personal preference. All right, I'm not sure how I've been going. I'm going to close this up. Not really sure how to do that. I think I just turn it off. But I want to thank you guys. If you haven't done so, or if this post is a video, I don't know, put in the comments when you would like me to do this, because this is simple. This is easy to do. And I'll do them more frequently, because I don't need lights and all this other stuff to be able to do this, as long as it sounds well. So, let me know if the sound was well. I mean, a lot of the things I can probably figure out, have my staff help me to figure some of these things out to be able to do this a little bit more. But let me know when it's a good time to do this. Obviously, I'm asking you guys that are watching this on a Saturday. So if there's another time, or if you think there's a time that's going to work better for other people, let me know what those are, and we'll go from there. But, again, thank you guys. Thank you for the support. Thank you for everything that you've done for Elite FTS, my staff, everything. I appreciate it more than you know. I guess I'm supposed to say subscribe, hit the bell, or whatever the fuck we're supposed to do. I'm never going to be good at that. So thank you, and I'm going to wrap it up. I think I just hit end stream, and we'll see you next time.